struggle. What we've done here is balanced financial hardship with avoiding extreme illness that could debilitate us for who knows how long. Are we now comfortable with the idea that it's 2 weeks and then over? The leader who knows the reality better than any other right now, at least in New York, is the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, of course, my brother. Thank you for coming back to the show.
Mom told me I had to.
What was your reaction to what the president said about, I'm not looking at months. I'm not going to let the elephant jump off the ledge because of a cat or whatever he said. We're looking to open back up. Surprised?
I'm not surprised. Look, the president is very concerned about the economy, right? The economy was doing well. The economy is now truly suffering. The consequences haven't even been felt yet, because not only have you stopped the revenue machine, you've increased the expense machine, okay? So those two things are going to compound each other. So the president is very eager to get back to the economy. Everybody agrees that this is an unsustainable situation. You can't keep spending money and close down the economy. And the president is eager to get it opened as quickly as possible. I actually have a group that is working on the restart of the economy, because I get it too. I mean, this is New York, and we're the home of so much of this. So coming up with a plan to restart the economy is very important. I think but this, you don't want to, it's a false choice to say public health or restart the economy, right? Nobody's going to make that choice. And by the way, if you have to make that choice, it's public health, all right? Because you cannot put a value on a human life. And nobody cares how long it takes to get the economy up and running if you actually saved lives. But, Christopher, there is an art form here, which is overlaying a public health strategy and an economic strategy. In other words, what we did is we just closed everything down as quickly as we could. Just shut all the doors, border all the windows. Mm-hmm. There was no art to what we did. There was no nuance. Is there a public health strategy that says, look, you can start to bring young people back to work. You can start to test and find out who had the virus and who resolved from the virus, and they can start to go back to work. And that's how we'll restart the economy, with a smart public health strategy. Because closing the door on everyone was only because we didn't know better. Right? If you now look at it, it didn't make any sense to close the schools, send my kids home with me, or older people, or with grandmothers who were vulnerable to this virus, and young people were then maybe bringing it into the house. We didn't have any data or science to instruct us. But now you can come up with a smarter public health strategy that actually protects older people, lets younger people get back to work, and that can start the economic recovery. But it has to be that smart. It can't be reactive. It can't be emotional.
But this is the part I don't get. So from watching the coverage of what's going on in the state, the rate of hospitalizations seems to be increasing. So it seems like you're just starting to feel what this enemy, this war, is really about. So how can people make sense and reconcile these two things, that we're getting close to figuring out how to open things back up at the time that it seems to be getting even worse, and the idea that a month from today we may have the worst part of the capacity crisis, and the president saying he's going to reopen things in a week or so? It just doesn't seem like those can go together.
Yeah, well, look, the so-called walk and chew gum. Do we have to think about restarting the economy? Yes. Do we have to plan for it? Yes. Should we be thinking about a public health strategy that actually starts the economy? That, to me, is the art form for government in this situation. But what we're looking at right now is this wave of increasing cases. I just got off the phone with a new projection model that New York City was seeing double the number of cases every 2.5 days. That can take your breath away. That curve they keep talking about, that we have to flatten the curve, that's not a curve, Christopher. That is a wave. That is a tsunami. That's the scene in The Perfect Storm where George Clooney is trying to go up the wave, and he gives the boat all the gas he can, diesel he can, to try to get over the top of the wave, and the wave crashes over him. This wave is going to crash over our healthcare system. It will crash anywhere from 10 days to 3 weeks.
From now.
It is going to overwhelm the healthcare system. From now. It's going to overwhelm the healthcare system. And where we're going to feel it most, we can scramble and create beds. We'll have a staff problem because staff are getting sick, and we're doing everything we can to find reserve staff. We won't have the equipment, and we won't have the ventilators. I have been saying for weeks, we need 30,000 ventilators. I've been saying it publicly. I've been requesting from the federal agencies. HHS, Secretary Azar there, sent 500 ventilators. We need 30,000 ventilators. If you don't have the ventilator, a person who needs the ventilator will die without the ventilator. It's a respiratory disease. And we're not getting the ventilators. I've been saying, institute the darn federal procurement act.
So why do you think he doesn't do it?
Companies to produce them.
Why wouldn't he do it?
Because their theory is companies are voluntarily saying, I want to help, I want to help, I want to increase production. General Motors is saying, I'll get into the ventilator business. That's all well and fine, and it is a nice thing, and the corporations are doing great things. But you can't manage an operation on this ad hoc basis of people saying, yeah, I'm really going to give it a go. Order the ventilators, pay for the ventilators, say this is how many I need.
Why wouldn't he do it?
This is where they have to go. Because their theory of operation is public-private sector partnership. You've seen them at press conferences, Peter Navarro. Companies are coming forward and saying they'll do it anyway. We don't have to order them because they're doing it. It's a totally different theory of operating.
All right, so let's do this.
That's
Governor,
nice that corporations want to help you. I want specific numbers. Well, then don't. Then don't. If you
I know, but I have to take
about interrupting me.
I know,
Don't
but
interrupt
you
me.
have
Okay.
a little bit of Pop's
All
gift
right, that's
where you just
understand.
kind of keep going. Let me take a commercial,
Oh.
and then when we come
And
back,
you don't.
when we come
I
back
see.
from the commercial,
Yeah.
I want to ask you what
Okay.
you need, where things are, and what your assessment is of the job you've done so far and where you think this goes.
Oh.
Thank you very much for your patience. I appreciate it. We'll be
you.
back
Thank
right after this. Back with the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. You talked about ventilators right there at the end of the first block, Governor, that they gave us 500. We need tens of thousands. What do you do?
Yeah, we need 30,000. First, what I do is I say to Secretary Azar, look at the first word in the name of the department that you run. It's called Health and Human Services. Focus on health. You look at the projections in New York, you look at the hospitalization rate, look at how many people are going to an ICU, how many people have to be vented, and tell me how we save these lives without the 30,000 ventilators. Second, we're trying to buy the ventilators all across the globe. Everyone's competing against everyone else, and that's why the federal government should step up and do it. Third, we're going to try an untested technology where we split the ventilator tubes. In other words, normally it's one ventilator to one person. Is there a way to take that ventilator, which is essentially a
You're the
pump,
mechanic. Do
and
you have enough
split
power in the pump to split it?
You have enough power in the pump to split it, yes. But can you split that ventilator into 2 tubes for 2 patients, 3 tubes for 3 patients? They're trying things like this in Italy. The tricky thing is the ventilator has a set pressure, and normally you regulate the pressure to that patient's lungs, right? My lung capacity is better than your lung capacity. So the ventilator would have to give me more oxygen than it would have to give you. How do you put 2 people on that same ventilator? So we're working through that. But this is just a real stretch, Chris, because you don't have the number of ventilators.
I will talk about your newfound confidence in a second, but first, new drug therapies that the president puts a lot of stock in. There's a lot online about them. Can you hear me, Governor? Can you hear me, Governor, or no? Well, this is a great chance for me to say some things to him. Do you hear me now? You never know with a politician if they really don't hear you or they didn't like where the questions were going. So let me see if we can get him back online. Governor, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? All right, let me do this. I'll take a quick commercial. We'll get him back online. I want to try to get you the information on, well, what about these new drug therapies? And where does he see it going in terms of how many weeks and months? And also, why are people paying attention to New York in a way that the president doesn't seem to? Why are so many of you resonating with what's happening in that state and, frankly, with this governor? And I'll figure out why he didn't like the question once it became a little uncomfortable. Next.
And here we have another burst pipe.
Coronavirus. Get daily news updates. Sign up for the CNN newsletter.
All right, let's bring the governor back. We think we fixed the audio problem. Do you hear me, Governor?
I hear you, but you should pay your phone bill.
I think the problem is on the state's infrastructure side. We'll deal with that later, one problem at a time, if you will. Drug therapies. The president seems to have faith in them. They're all over the internet, that anti-malarial drugs, that people are getting better, even in this country, in Florida. You put any stock in any of that at this point?
I put hope. We have 3 drugs we're looking at. The hydrochloroquine that the president is talking about, that comes in tomorrow. We're going to start that right away in the New York City hospitals. The president expedited the FDA approval. We have a second drug that New York State is working on developing that actually tests the plasma of people who had the virus, extracts the antibodies, and injects those antibodies into someone who's dealing with the virus. And the third drug is testing your blood to see if you had the virus and have the antibodies and it resolved. That would let you know you had it, you're immune by most probability, and you can go back to work.
So there's hope, but again, that all takes time, and there's empiricism in that and testing and protocols. Tony Fauci's talked about that. I actually would like to take a turn to that quickly. What is the straight talk on what it's like working with the White House right now? I've heard you be deferential to the White House and saying, look, we're trying, we're doing it. But it seems like your needs are not decreasing at the kind of rate that you need them to deal with what you call a tsunami. What is the reality of dealing with the White House? Straight talk. Straight talk.
Yeah, I always do straight talk. And I would disagree with your use of the word deferential, but it's your show.
Don't forget it.
I've been very clear with the White House.
Don't forget it.
Yeah, it's hard to forget. I've been very clear. I have an immediate problem on the equipment for this wave that is happening. PPEs, gowns, masks, most important are the ventilators. And there has been no response. There has been no response. And that's why I said right here, looking at the camera on your show, to Secretary Azar, he has to be responsible here. Tell me where I get 30,000 ventilators. Because, Christopher, people will die who need a ventilator. They will be mostly elderly. They'll have an underlying illness. That's true. But some can be younger, like Anderson Cooper showed us. You can have an underlying illness, be recovering from cancer, be younger. You'll need a ventilator and you won't get it. We're trying this splitting mechanism, but we shouldn't be here. Just order a company to produce the darn ventilators, and that's it. And when we get to 2 weeks and you have people in hospitals who are dying because we don't have ventilators, that's going to be a national tragedy. We'll try all the drugs. I'm trying everything else. We're working on every level, but it comes down to having the ventilators, and you have them or you don't.
What is the day like for you now? How is it managing a situation like this? I'm not talking emotionally. I'm just saying in terms of the daily activities. What is this like?
Well, this is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And look, I've been in the federal government. I did disaster work all across this country, all across the world. We did disaster recovery, as you know. I've been in this state. I've handled everything in this state. So it's the hours don't matter. It's the consequence here. It's the consequence here. Christopher, the numbers are big. And it's life and death. And if they are anywhere close to right on these projections of how quickly these numbers are going to grow, the number of people who we are going to lose can easily be in the thousands. And God forbid we say we could have saved them if we had the right equipment. That's what keeps me up at night. And that's why I'm as strident as I am about these ventilators and the urgency of the ventilators and the equipment. Because it literally is life and death. You see it coming. It's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, but it's coming. That wave is coming.
What do you say to the people who say, we misjudged it? We didn't need to do all this. The numbers aren't going to be that bad. This was too much preparation.
Yeah, they're wrong. They're going to be wrong because people will die and the numbers will be inarguable. Look, I don't make any political decisions on this. This is all follow the science, follow the numbers, follow the health professionals. You look at those numbers increasing every day, doubling every 2.5 days. Just look at the trajectory. Just dot, 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 connect the dots, right? And then you tell me that anyone is overhyping this situation.
Let me ask you something. Why do you think New York is getting so much attention right now? People have such a spotlight on you that they're watching your pressers every day. What do you think it's about, personally?
I think it's because New York, we have this density. We are the gateway to the world. The disease came here. The disease is growing here faster than anywhere else. So just on the numbers, New York is the epicenter.
Do you think that when you assess this, people who don't know you, obviously you raised me, so I understand how you do things because you taught me. But in assessing, what was the right move that you've made so far, and what was a wrong move that you've made? Because the president talks about learning things, and then he talks about washing hands. I don't know how profound a lesson that is. What have you learned on your level?
Yeah. First, thank you for the compliment. I don't want to be have total association with you, frankly, in your show, because I don't need all that negativity. I'm generating my own negativity. Thank you very much.
Not right now. You're the man right now. Why is that?
Yeah, the best, because I'm your brother. That's why.
That was my suspicion.
The best decision was.
Go ahead.
The best decision was closing everything down, which politically may have terrible consequences, but so what? It was the right thing to do. That's what Pop taught us. You do the right thing. Closing everything down was the right decision. The worst decision, which is a lousy question by you, is probably coming on your show, frankly.
What have you learned in terms of what you could have handled better sooner? Because that seems to be the lesson, is that states were listening to what was being said from the federal level. What is the lesson there for how to prepare for the next wave that you'll do differently?
Every disaster has its own little hidden trick in it. This one was medical capacity, medical equipment, and these ventilators. I did not see, no one saw these ventilators coming and the urgency of ventilators and how many ventilators we have in this country and how many we can make. So that, I don't think anyone saw. I was watching China, and it was inevitable that what was happening in China was going to happen here. There was no theory that their immune systems were different than ours. We started very early on, Christopher. I started very early on getting ready, preparing, blowing the whistle, blowing the horn, making the case. The ventilators, not having the ventilators, and not being able to get the ventilators, and the PPE equipment, which the federal government could help us with. That is the greatest frustration in all of this.
Well, you got to get it right, because there's going to be another wave, right? That this will, if you look at the models, it goes down, but it comes back. Not to use 1918 as a go-to, but obviously that was the huge miss in that situation. So how do you get to where you need to be, where people don't live through this a second time the same way?
Yeah, I'm old, but I wasn't here in 1918. But you're right. The medical capacity. You know, we have a healthcare system that is basically a private healthcare system, right? So they have private economics. They have capacity that they can sell. They don't build beds as backup beds. They don't build additional ICU beds for a public health emergency. These are expensive beds, it's expensive real estate, so they don't have a backup public health equipment stockpile that's worth anything, or a backup medical capacity. That has to change. That has to change.
So it's going to get worse. The hospitalizations are increasing, but you want people to know that, even though it's a tough message to deliver. That type of tough talk has had people recognize you in a different way, even though you've been doing this job a long time. You're in your third term. How do you explain to yourself how people seem to be seeing you in a different way now, even physically, making, comments about how you look and how you come across that are really hard to kind of square with any sense of reality?
Because it's not reality. I'm doing the same job I've done always, that I did in Washington, that I've been doing here in the state of New York. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Pop. Pop used to talk about how he gave the same speech, and then one day he gave the Democratic National Convention speech, and then he became great. And after that speech, everybody said, "Wow, your speeches are so great." And Dad's point was, it was the same speech I was always giving, but the lens changed. The only thing that happened here is the lens changed. I'm doing what I do, and I've been doing it the same way, and I look the same as I've always looked.
To be fair, the reason Pop, so I'll get to that. I'll get to that. One, I'm hearing your fingernails like scratch on something, like you're nervous. I know you're busy. There's always time to cut your fingernails and call your mom. But what happened with Pop was he delivered the right speech at the right time, and it was seen by so many. That's what you're doing right now that is being recognized and given acclaim. You're doing the job the right way, when it matters, when eyes are on you. So thank God for that. The looks have to make you question the veracity of it must be very confusing for you, because you know that what people are saying about how you look really can't be accurate. So it must be hard for you to make sense of what is real and what is true now. I feel for you.
La gelosia.
No.
Tu sais la gelosia.
Always
No,
straight,
jealous, my brother.
right across the plate, straight across the plate.
My little brother. Don't worry, there's still time, there's hope for you. One day you can grow up to be like me.
Listen.
I've tried to be like you my whole life. Look where it got me. Governor Andrew Cuomo, thank you very much for doing the job. Thank you for caring for the family. I love you. I'll talk to you after this.
Better than me.
I'll talk to you after this.
You're better than me.
Only
I'm proud of
on the
you.
basketball court.
Only on the basketball court.
Never,
That's what
don't
Pop
lie.
said. That's what Pop said.
That's what Pop said.
Never, he did not, he
he said.
did not. You never beat me
country
once.
should know.
Not once.
He said Andrew has tremendous capability. He is blessed in many ways, but he's got hands like bananas and he can't play ball. Everybody knows it. Just saying. You're doing a great job, though.
You're doing a great job, though.
And spank you.
You know where I live. I'll see you soon.
You know where I live.
Be well, Governor.
I'll see you soon. Be well, Governor.
Love you.
I do love him. The tension is real, though. And I'll tell you what, the pressure is real as well. It can't be true that we're a week or so away from getting back and that the hospitalization rate is going up and up and up and they're not getting the equipment they need to deal with the need. Those two things can't exist in the same universe unless one is politics and one is the pragmatism of doing what needs to be done for us. And that's why we need to have these conversations. Another conversation to have. We are obsessed with the number of cases, and of course with the number of people who are succumbing to the illness. Anderson is doing beautiful obituary pieces, eulogies of people who have passed. But what number should we be facing and dealing with that I argue to you no one's mentioning? We're going to bring in Dr. Sanjay Gupta for what is the reality behind the numbers. There he is. Doc, thanks for being with us right after this break.